had no idea nitrogen fertilizer did this.
What were your opinions on that?
I thought it was very devastating.
Huh. So here we have coral reef. It looks healthy. All that red in the picture, is that caused by nitrogen fertilizer?
Really depressing. Thank you, Colton.
Would you be shocked to find out your food is causing a lot of this?
Yes. I'd actually be very surprised.
Society is like, we're just changing everything about nature, and just because of our manufacturing and what we want, we just impact the environment. And I don't know if we like actually think about what we do before we actually do it, but right here it looks like we just do it for ourselves and not for Mother Nature.
Mother Nature, something that we've been forgetting about lately. In recent years, human population has pushed her to a breaking point. Yet, her cries fall upon dead ears. We have become so far separated from our natural selves that we do not realize the negative impacts we have on this environment. In this documentary, I'll be talking about the many choices I have made to try to fix this by informing people or even making personal decisions in my life.
In the news, lakes without life. New York's Big Moose Lake is one of hundreds of lakes that are dead or dying. Fish and plant life are being killed off by contaminated rain. We'll be back with acid rain in the news. Scientists say the acid rain starts with factory smokestacks and exhaust from cars and trucks. Those fumes mix with moisture in the air. The mixture, they say, forms high over the Midwest, then falls back to earth as rain in the east. Acid rain has made the water in some lakes too acidic for fish to survive. Big Moose Lake in upstate New York looks great from the surface, but underwater is another story. About 30 years ago, residents started noticing that fish in the lake were dying. Today, very few fish survive there at all.
That alarming problem overtaking some of America's lakes. We even saw it in Washington, D.C. this week at the Lincoln Memorial, where the famous reflecting pool was filled with clumps of green. It is happening all across America, making some people very sick. And here's our senior national correspondent, Jim Avila, tonight.
It not only looks bad and smells bad, it's toxic. And those who are unlucky enough to fall in without a suit like this get sick pretty fast. Dan Jenkins didn't even go in the lake next to his house, but his dog Casey did.
He's covered in this carpet of green slime.
It made breathing difficult. 72 hours later, he died. Ohio State's Dr. Jeffrey Reuter is the foremost authority on blue-green algae. He says it's a nationwide problem, largely caused by farm fertilizer runoff.
As you can see, this problem of nitrogen pollution has been around for decades. It's been haunting our population for years. Yet, people still don't know its impacts. People are still misinformed. So, I took some time out to interview a couple of my classmates. Let's see what they thought.
What is nitrogen?
Nitrogen is one of the most abundant gases in our world and everywhere. It's everywhere.
What is nitrogen?
Nitrogen?
Yes.
An element on the periodic table.
Explain more.
Huh?
What do you know about it?
I know it's used in some fertilizers. I know it's essential. It's an essential element for plants to grow.
Do you know you have a nitrogen footprint?
I do?
Yes.
Oh.
Nitrogen.
Nitrogen is a type of element.
So have you ever heard of your carbon footprint?
Yes.
Okay. Did you know you have a nitrogen footprint?
No.
Nitrogen.
It's an element that is, wow, I'm really bad at chemistry, I don't know.
Do you know what nitrogen fertilizer is?
It's like fertilizer for plants and nitrogen.
Yeah, it's like, you know what Miracle-Gro is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but imagine that on a large scale.
Oh.
Do you know how it's impacting the environment?
Not really. No, because this is like the first time I've heard of it.
How do you believe nitrogen fertilizer is impacting the environment?
I do not know. Like, that's not something I think about.
As you just witnessed in the interviews, not many of the stakeholders knew much about the problem, nor did they know about their impacts on the environment. One of the negative impacts of nitrogen pollution can be coral bleaching. This is when coral dies and turns white, giving it the name coral bleaching. Another result of nitrogen pollution is an algae bloom. This is when the algae uses a nitrogen fertilizer to grow out of control. This kills fish by suffocating them and completely destroying the ecosystem. Other impacts of it are smog, deforestation, global warming, ocean dead zones, and acid rain. What would the world look like without this problem? That's the question I asked my stakeholders. A lot of them said we would be less reliant on nitrogen fertilizer to grow our food, and more reliant on aquaponics or hydroponics, more efficient ways of growing. They also said transportation would be different. We would be driving cars that run off alternative fuel sources such as biodiesel, hydrogen, or solar power. Also, there would be a way to soak up the nitrogen that we've already released into the environment. Even though the problem isn't being as covered as it should be, there are some people doing some stuff. There was a senior over at Grow House who is working on an aquaponics system. Let's see what he has to say.
What have you been doing to lower nitrogen consumption?
On a personal scale, I have tried to encourage aquaponics, which is a nitrogen runoff-free growing system.
How have you gotten involved with this problem?
Last year, I learned about the imbalance in the nitrogen cycle after doing a little bit of research on the engineering grand challenges. One of them was balancing the nitrogen cycle. So I read more into that, looked up a lot of stuff, found it really interesting, and got more into that.
What have you done to try to make a difference?
Last year, my intervention was to build an aquaponic system, and this year I have continued that on the side with my internship. So actually right behind me is the aquaponic system, mostly in progress at the moment, but that's my main intervention for trying to offset runoff of nitrogen.
Faced trying to solve this problem?
The main problem is that there isn't one solution to offsetting our nitrogen footprints. Nitrogen comes from nitrate from cars and runoff from fertilizers, and that's really hard to directly stop. Because the only way really to would be to do policy or to make policies against it or something. That's hard to do. So I decided to go with aquaponics, which I think helps me put off my nitrogen footprint, which is what I want to do with it.
Why do you believe people are still stuck on nitrogen fertilizer?
It's a really good way of ensuring a harvest. If you can just sprinkle a couple extra pounds of nitrogen fertilizer per square foot or whatever to ensure that you're going to get lots and lots of food, why not? Nitrogen is really cheap because of the Haber-Bosch process, so it's really a why not sort of thing.
After talking to my stakeholders and talking to the people who were actually doing something to solve the problem, I created a list of interventions I could possibly do. I considered what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do was have a multi-angular attack, something that had implementation that I can physically do, and something that I can inform people about. A little bit of both worlds. So I created a criteria matrix. The criteria that were most important to me were convenience, cost, and effectiveness. When picking an intervention, I thought about something. I already had an aquaponics system, so this would answer a lot of my criteria. I already had all the materials, so it would be cheap. It was at school, so it was convenient, and it was very efficient. But this didn't answer my stakeholders' needs. So, when I was interviewing people, I realized something. People didn't know about this problem. I interviewed them, and they were blank on some stuff. So, I thought about what intervention I could possibly pick to fix this. I created a website because I thought people would be able to learn about how their choices impact the environment. Since the purpose was to inform people and get people to listen, I really wanted something to drive it home. So I started out surveying people. I asked them questions like, how much poultry do you eat? How much beef? What about vegetables? Serving sizes. And I used that information to find out their nitrogen footprint. How many pounds a week? A lot of people were surprised by this. Some people were in 100 pounds in a week. But I realized something. Vegetarians and vegans produce the lowest amounts. When creating my website, I wanted it to be as unbiased and engaging as possible. So, at first I started out with general topics about nitrogen, what nitrogen was, how it benefits the environment, what the nitrogen cycle was, who created the fixation process we use today. Then I moved into the impacts, what in the environment was being impacted, and how humans are interacting with that, and how we cause those impacts. Then, to engage the reader, I created a bunch of pictures on serving sizes of foods and how much nitrogen it takes to produce those foods. To finish off the educational part of my intervention, I created an infographic that talks about your nitrogen footprint and what impacts that. I printed those out and I posted those around the school for kids to look at. The second half of my implementation has yet to be finished. Aquaponics takes a lot of time to do. Recently, Brian at Grow House has told me to finish his project. Since he is leaving, he's going to need someone to continue it on. I gladly took that opportunity. Recently, I've been putting in beneficial bacteria and checking the chemistry on the tanks. I'm going to have a lot of plans for this. Large grow beds, tilapia, and vertical grow boxes. Check in soon to see how my progress has been. Since my problem is worldwide, I'm going to face the challenge of trying to track progression of my implementation. The way I'm going to try to do this for my website is by tracking views. The way this is going to help me is by seeing if my content is reaching my target audience. For my aquaponics system, the way I'm going to track progression is seeing how many people I get involved. If I get more than one person involved, that's a check plus in my book.